All right, it's 3 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome to day number, I think, 12 now. So, for 12 days, all the weekdays of this month so far, I've been working in a tiny little journal. So, I'm glad that you can join me. If you want to pop into the comments and say hi, I always appreciate seeing who's out there and where you're tuning in from. So, today, to be honest, my energy is a little bit low. I do have my tea, but just kind of it's been a busy day, and I sat down. I was hoping to get some images printed out, but I never got around to that. So um, anyway, I just kind of felt like, I just kind of need to ease in, maybe just kind of spend a little bit of time working in the journal, not really thinking too much about messages or meanings or images, but just trying to like get into the groove, and we'll see kind of where things go. So I've pulled out my paints, I've pulled out my brushes, probably will pull out the Inktense pencils as well. And I think what I'm going to do is sort of like I did the very first couple days, kind of revisit some of those ideas and work on some pages that are kind of in the middle and maybe like closer to the back of the book. So kind of working my way forward in the book, um, and taking a look at some of those pages that have been started, but where there's maybe not so much going on. And so kind of taking some of the ideas that I explored a couple weeks ago in the first couple videos and maybe exploring some of that as I work today. But like I said, it's just I need to have like I don't my brain's not really working. That's what my wife and I always say when we're really tired. So um yeah, so whenever I kind of get in that mood, I think just kind of getting going, getting to work is always helpful. So I'm going to switch it over and get to work. So anyway, if you have any questions or comments, of course, pop them in the comments. So, I've flipped through this the last few days, and the pages up front are really kind of feeling pretty rich, pretty layered. And then as you kind of work your way back, things kind of open up. There's not as many layers, not as many things going on, and so that's kind of where I want to go. Like this one feels a little bit more layered, a little bit more resolved than something like this, but um, I'm just really trying to flip through and go through, and I'm really thinking about like pushing in. I don't have like a whole lot of empty pages to get started, but I kind of want to like move in because really kind of at the halfway point of this month, or actually probably a little bit beyond that. So, just kind of have a couple weeks left of doing this. I don't plan on finishing it. I don't think I'll have it finished and resolved, but it'd be nice to have, something kind of going on all the pages. But yeah, so we'll kind of see. So I'm just kind of thinking like, yeah, there it's blank. So let's go ahead and pick up and do something here. Just like I've done before, I'm really thinking like, oh, maybe I want to just kind of continue the color schemes and the colors around to that side, and then we'll kind of see where things go. But thinking I use that Shiraz and that yellow together, just kind of created some oranges. So I think if I just kind of go in with this, uh, I think they call it mango. It's kind of a yellow orange. So I often find that when my energy is kind of low, but I still want to work, kind of turning to these kind of basic techniques, basic working things, just getting myself moving with uh, with the paint and with the materials can go a long way in just bringing me into the work. So sometimes we feel kind of tired, and it's like we sit down like, oh, I don't know if I even want to work, and then we sort of can push our way through. But this is just an easy way to kind of ease my way into things, I guess, is a good way of saying it. um, so I'm thinking of So I've got some orange there. I'm thinking about stopping here and then maybe switching color. So I think let's take a different brush, one that I can easily go around. I think I'm going to pick up this red. A little bit of water, spread that out. One of the things, especially when I'm starting pages, I don't really worry too much about being neat and being precise and kind of trying to make things perfect. I think sometimes, especially at the beginning, we get really caught up in, oh, it's got to be this certain way. I am trying to stay within the line, or actually outside of the line of the profile. But even if I do go astray a little bit and get some paint where I don't want to, it's not that big of a deal. A little bit of this orange. Okay. So I don't want the wet paint to get on here. I want to keep this clean, so I'll hit this with the hair dryer. Okay. So that's dry. So yeah, I really like kind of how that sets the stage, the different colors, because as you flip through it, you might not even be aware, especially like if we go to the beginning, it's like you might not really be aware of the underlying color and how it sort of transitions and flows from page to page. And then things change as I add layers, but starts to kind of create this really kind of underlying flow. And so just like even here, it goes from red, yellows, and oranges to yellows, then to greens, and then back to yellows. More yellows and reds and oranges. Just kind of flows from page to page. But now might be a good time to really do something different here, and then sort of change so that it's not a gradual change, but something very kind of more abrupt. So I'm thinking, for some reason, I was just thinking this turquoise color. So this is wet, and what I'm doing is just kind of holding it with my fingers so that it doesn't touch this opposite page. Okay. That's pretty wet, so I do want to hit that up before I move any further. So So mute myself and try it. So I moved a few pages in, did a little something. I think I'll go ahead and flip back, start thinking about what I might do on these. So, here's an instance where I have kind of a color. Yeah, green's related to the blue, but it's a little bit different. So then I can think like, do I want to bring some green over or some blue over, or do I want to keep it that way? I do feel like I want to do something else to these pages, layer some other things on them. So what I'm thinking of is that, I've got these lines on a lot of the other pages, and then I sort of didn't work them all the way through. So I might think about how I can bring in some of those. So let me grab my pen. I think what I'm going to do, I want to use black, but I don't want it like a real thick line. I want this to kind of fall into the background. And so I'm going to get the the XS, the extra superfine. I think that's what that stands for. And so that way I can have a really thin black line that goes through. And then on the map here, there are like thin black lines too. So I can kind of pick up some of the lines on the maps. I'm just kind of looking at some of these pages that I've been working on, and feeling like, yeah, they're very empty, but I think part of it is because there's some collage, like, the brain and the text, but back here I've got the torn maps, I've got security envelopes, I go back, I've got some magazines. So I'm just kind of thinking, do I want to kind of continue with some of that? And I think I do. Let me kind of pull out some collage, because I really had no inclination of what I was going to do. It's kind of the fun part. Just pull up some of these. So yeah, so I think I just kind of want to continue with some of this collage. And maybe thinking about how this kind of starts to tie together. The only problem whenever I work is I tend to like have all this stuff around me, so you can't really see all the stuff that's on my table. That really makes it hard to sort of have enough room to work. I kind of do that. I kind of like, even if I have a very big open space, I end up like just having this little tiny space that I end up working in, and with all this stuff around me. So by going back and including, the collage that I've used in kind of earlier spaces will help tie it together. Just like the color does, yeah, I'm using kind of some of the same color and the same color transitions, but it just kind of felt like it was missing something. And so some of this basic collage. So I never really have like a specific progression of ideas or techniques. I just sort of, especially as I'm moving through, I kind of jump around and jump back and forth and use a lot of the same ideas and concepts, and just, like I said today, just to kind of just want to work. I don't really want to think. But of course, as I work, I start to get some ideas, things start to happen. All right, so I just flipped back and I saw the very first 2 pages that I did where I did some lines. So I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll do some of that. I haven't done that in a while. Or here I've done some of the punchinello. So now it's like, okay, let's do some of that. Mhm. Oh, I know. Grab my stencils, but this time I think I'm going to jump back here a ways. I think I'll lay this down. And then by using the thin flexible stencils, I can do the numbers, and then the numbers will be kind of part of the background. I'm not going to get the paint too dark. And then I'm trying not to get a lot of water either. That way it maybe won't bleed so much underneath. So I've had a few people, I think, join in. So just want to say I'm kind of, my energy is kind of a little low today. So I'm just kind of doing some basic things to get some pages started later in the book. Right now, I'm just kind of using some paint and some stencils. So yeah, like with the paint and the stencils, the numbers aren't super clean. There's a lot of bleeding, but I like that because it's going to be a background. The other thing is that this has a lot of paint on it. So I'm going to take this, turn the page, and then take the wet paint and put it down. But there's some wet paint back here. So if I take a paper towel, kind of wipe off some of the wet paint on the back. So now some of that paint transfers. It's still wet on the front. So by doing this, I end up kind of wiping some of that paint back through the stencil. I just kind of have these random marks, which is kind of interesting. Of course, kind of looking at these random marks gets me thinking like, okay, I was trying, a lot of times in my typical work, I use a lot of geometric patterns. Things are kind of neat and clean. And so trying to think like, oh, how can I create things that aren't quite as pristine or geometric? And so there's lots of things that we can kind of do. Just trying to, actually looking around. I thought I had some. So I'm just going to take, this is just some plastic wrap. So I'm going to just take a little piece of this. Just thinking about different ways to make marks. So I'm going to kind of just ball up the paint or the plastic. Okay, I think I'm back up now. All right, so sorry about that. Let me just make sure. All right, looks like I'm back. So yeah, I looked up and all of a sudden everything stopped. Okay, so I was saying that you took some plastic wrap and kind of just balled it up. I wanted to get wrinkled. There's different ways to use the plastic wrap. There's a way where you could have wet paper wet paint on paper and you stick it down, but I'm going to use it to stamp and just to see. So hopefully all those wrinkles will do something kind of interesting. So I got a nice big brush, and I'm just going to put some paint down. I haven't really used it this way. I was just kind of thinking about how I could get some different marks that were a little bit more unpredictable. There we go. And what happens whenever I push it together? Okay. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Looks like a sponge. But it might be interesting since I did that there. Let me go back and find some other places I can do that. So I like it whenever kind of one idea kind of leads to another, and you do something you're like, oh, that starts getting me thinking, kind of gets me excited about stuff. So over here on my paint palette, what I've done is just taken some of this purple, just made a puddle in the lid. Most lids of paint trays are palettes, so that just allows me to get some of that paint on there. And then if that's a little kind of harsh, like I was trying to be careful not to get paint on certain parts, so I can take my brush, just paint over it. And so some of that texture is going to stay. We'll just kind of soften it up a little bit. So even though I didn't use the hair dryer, this paint has kind of dried enough and soaked into the pages enough that I can go over top, and that texture or the numbers stay in place. That's the one thing with this Inktense paint. It's supposed to. So Deirdre was just asking about the paint. So this is Derwent Inktense. Was it the travel Inktense travel paint pan set, something like that. So it's basically the same materials as my pencils, and it dries a little bit, and it's a little bit more permanent than watercolor. So that way I can paint over, it doesn't lift up too much. But even with watercolor, oftentimes if you let things dry enough, you can kind of go on top of them and you don't completely obliterate what's underneath. It might soften a little bit, but yeah. I'm just kind of flipping through thinking if I want to, what else I want to add. Yeah, it's like I'm just looking at the leaf shapes. It's like I have them here and I have them back here, but I don't really have them in too many other places. So just kind of think like I want to bring those in. The question is where. Thinking here. Thinking, do I want ink? Do I want paint? Do I want the Inktense pencils? Part of me, I think ink. I haven't used. The color over here, dusky purple. Actually, let me get this brush. This one's just a little bit thinner. Should help me paint smaller ones. So what I'm thinking is to paint them and then make them solid. Okay. So I like that. I haven't really tried that before with painting those kind of shapes. They're a little subtle, kind of like that. So let that dry. Yeah, I feel my yeah, my energy's like really getting low now. Um, so uh, yeah, so Deirdre's making a comment about the little photo. That's from a brochure for the Japanese gardens in Portland, Oregon. So yeah, definitely a peaceful setting. All right. So yeah, I think that's gonna kind of wrap it up for today. Yeah, I'll be back again tomorrow, but I do want to mention that I have a brand new online workshop. I know some of you may have signed up for it already. It starts this Saturday. It actually was inspired by this little book. It's called Small Books, Mini Journals, and Zines, and we'll be actually making little books and little journals and little zines to work in. Um, and it's going to be more structured. This is just me kind of every day coming and going, oh, what can I add to this now? So if you're interested in that, you can go to my website and find that information, and you could register. Starts this Saturday. It's a Zoom, a live Zoom class. If you can't make it live, you can still participate because I record all of the classes and I make them available. They're only, they're, yeah, I make them available and they're only accessible with a password. So you have access to the recorded videos of each class. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more and actually maybe making little books, you can check that out on my website. So anyway, but thank you so much for joining me once again. If you came in late, of course, this video will be available shortly where you can watch the whole thing or you can watch it on YouTube. So I appreciate you being here. And I'll be back tomorrow, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And catch you tomorrow. And as always, happy creating.